That's beautiful.
And you raised an important point where you say sometimes you've got to protect your friends or you've got to protect people who you have an interest with.
Yeah.
So my only reason why I would bring up some of the things I'm bringing now is that people like her, like Bob, are on the forefront right now of campaigning for the DA.
Sure.
And he has said that he has decided to come back to reinvest in South Africa because he believes in the potential of South Africa. But more critically, there's something that he said that many people didn't listen to. He believes in South Africa because he believes that they're going to boot out the ANC and they're going to have a coalition. And what he doesn't say is that that coalition is going to be led by the DA.
Okay.
So where I would need to get clarity from people like Bob is that, Bob, Rob, if you're going to have the DA come back and people like you are behind the DA, have you atoned for this past and the filth that we're talking about, which we don't want to associate with you per se, but it's part and parcel of what it is that made you? Can we trust you and a DA that comes with you and other Jews who funded the same DA under the NP government, which gave us apartheid to make people like yourselves profitable? So that's the question that we would want to ask.
But it's a fair question. It's one of the things myself, him, many other white people, many other white DA members, we debate aggressively so, because we argue, Pen, what do you mean? I'm like, this is not about me. My voice, my vote doesn't mean fuck all. I'm saying if you're claiming that you want black voters, you want them to understand the Democratic Alliance is great at governing, are you willing to discuss social welfare? Are you willing to discuss land? Are you willing to discuss exactly what you're saying?
And
atonement and apology. And I've heard them say things like, but we've apologized. And I'm like, fuck that. You're lying, number one. Number two, even if you have, it's never been sincere. And I remember one Afrikaans gentleman saying, but what are we apologizing for? It wasn't us, it was the apartheid government. I'm like, this is the problem. And this is what looks like arrogance. Because if the ANC is corrupt and let's say I'm a child of whatever ANC leader. And then it's like, but you realize your father, grandfather, they ran this country to the ground. What do you have to, hey, it's not me. You're like, but you realize you're living in privilege because of fucking
that legacy.
And as long as specifically white people in those spaces don't want to have those conversations and they want to, but look at the ANC. I'm like, this is why you're never going to get votes. And that's why even today, and I've said this to Rob himself, I don't believe in the DA. I'm angry with the ANC. We can together stand and say #Futsak ANC, but you're not going to see me campaigning for the DA or any of these supposed other white leaders, because I'm like a clever black. I'm a better black. I understand white people, but if you can't even convince me, you don't have any idea. And I'm trying to give you a little window into the mindset of a black person in an RDP in a shack somewhere. You can say fuck the ANC and load shedding, but in their heads, that versus you're not even willing to try understand. Come live with us. Come, they're never going to hear you. So I fully hear what you're saying.
Not only that, we also have white people who are not able to introspect common sense. So the apartheid system failed.
Sure.
And it failed because it took resources of 100% of the people. It taxed 100% of the people. It took the labor of 100% of the people, and then it gave services to only 10%.
And that's capitalism, boy.
It's capitalism, but it's also mismanagement.
It is mismanagement.
That's how they were removed from power, by force.
Yeah.
When you see your own people uprising against you to remove you because you're such a bad leader, and the leadership, the bad leadership that you give is actually labeled a crime against humanity, you must know that your failure is monumental.
Sure.
What the ANC is doing will never be considered a crime against humanity. The misgovernance that they supposedly say the ANC is doing is not ever going to be called a crime against humanity. And what it is that the ANC is failing to do is a legacy of what it is that these whites did. So for instance, you look at the ESCOM situation. They created an electricity system that was created specifically to give electricity to the capitalists and the white corporates so that they can mine better, they can industrialize and produce better, and they can make money. Then they decided to give their proxies or their caretakers and their gatekeepers, the white population, the very same electricity. But this money that was used to create this was from the exploitation of the resources of this country called South Africa that they didn't own. So they're stolen resources from black South Africans. They used that to build ESCOM. They also used the labor of these black people. They also didn't pay these people adequate salaries. these people would be paid 10% of what they're supposed to be paid, and the other 90% would be used to subsidize whites so that they can have more money.
Sure.
But the whites were still paying the cheapest electricity in the world, which means they were not paying a fair value for that electricity, and they were not paying for replacement cost of this electricity. And that's why Eskom is where it is because the depreciation, the money to make sure that this Eskom can be maintained and this Eskom can be replaced and its machines can be replaced wasn't paid by white South Africans. So they were freeloading of this social welfare system of apartheid that allowed them to have cheap electricity, allowed them to have cheap maids, allowed them to have job preservation, and allowed them to have more salaries and higher salaries than they should have deserved at the expense of black people. And now that black people have to be put on that grid of the same electricity they built, the same electricity built by their stolen resources, they are now being told that they should pay for their electricity, yet they've been paying for the past 60 years since the establishment of Eskom. They've been playing with their blood, they've been paying with their labor, they've been paying with their low salaries. The reason you've got black tax today, you have to look after your grandmother, grandfather, you have to look after those relatives of yours that are sick from lung diseases caused by working in mines, is because the money that was supposed to be paid your grandfather, the pension that was supposed to be paid your grandfather, has been taken and put into the pockets of all white South Africans who are sitting with unjust enrichment that came from a period of exploitation. And then they want to blame Eskom's failures on the ANC. ANC should have a large kitty, huge savings, like the 380 billion I'm saying is sitting in white corporations. And I'm not even talking about what they've externalized. The ANC should have a kitty like that for all the parastatals if white South Africans had been paying the full value and full fee for what it is that they were using as services, and if the services were going to make them pay replacement cost for those things. They didn't.
Politics is